All right, so we'll keep it pretty short, keep it pretty casual. Just want to make sure I'm kind of being able to get a chance to at least meet you guys individually. Going up against Faker is pretty hard because I think that's the other talk that's going on. And then you guys can catch me later on as we talk about like team ownership and stuff. So we're talking today about what I think is going to be the future for not just KSV, but all esports in general. So I kind of wanted to keep it more casual and talk through a few of these things with you guys, as just kind of more my style. So we'll just really quickly run through the esports opportunity. And you guys have probably seen some of this stuff before. So everybody knows esports is very unique in that it's probably the only sport that's actually truly global. As much as I love the LA Galaxy, soccer still has not penetrated the United States, versus esports has penetrated every single country that has a computer, basically. So as you know, the esports audience is growing, very young. So while all the other sports are, you know, if you're looking at some of the actual numbers behind esports, it's right in line with what you're seeing in traditional sports. And what's even more unique about esports is the age, right? Whereas all the other sports are continuing to lose viewers, esports continues to rise and continues to get new, you know, audiences that are now able to kind of be in their prime in terms of whether it's spend, whether it's being interested, whether it's going to events. And what's even more unique is that, you know, they're right in kind of that age where they're having families. So this number is really going to be kind of the beginning of a new generation that's really defined by esports as the primary sport. But here's the fun part, right? I think everyone has seen those crazy esports numbers, but there's actually huge business challenges. And I kind of want to talk about why these business challenges exist. Number one is competition is actually heating up in this industry. So you have all these awesome guys, the Mets on the NYXL, they're kicking our butt right now in Overwatch League. But the 100 Thieves, you know, backed by the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Golden State Warriors are involved, and the New England Patriots as well. So across the board, you have the greatest teams in the world coming in with lots and lots of money and lots of know-how. And here's what I thought was really interesting. Here's a little bit of geeking out. So there was actually a study done about how to make money in sports. And there was a very simple regression analysis done around the English Premier League. And one of the things that is very obvious, but now it's proven with a graph, is the better you do, the more money you make. So that first graph on the left is basically just where you are in the league position and how much money that team is making. Makes sense, right? On the right, this is actually more interesting. Well, they said, well, if that's the case, are these teams making money? Well, a lot of these teams aren't, because in order to perform the best, you have to basically, on the right is basically the salary of the average player versus the league ranking of the team. But it makes sense, right? The best players like Kobe Bryant, I'm a huge Lakers fan. Still a Lakers fan. Just wait till we get Paul George, LeBron, and Kawhi. So if you look, basically this tells you the truth, right? Like Manchester United pays the most, and you know, paying for the best players, which makes sense. It's a pretty efficient market. There's always going to be instances where, you know, unless there's a salary cap, you kind of have this situation where in order to get the most amount of money, then you're going to have to kind of figure out how you're going to get the best players. And usually, you know, with more or less on salaries, it's going to be pretty competitive. So basically what's happened, if I go back, all these guys with lots of money, lots of know-how in the business, it's becoming hyper competitive, and in order to be competitive, you got to pay a lot of money for the best players, which they deserve. But there's a large revenue gap. So if you look at the average revenue per fan, the NFL is at $60 and esports is at $3.60. So but that's fine, right? It's better to have this problem where you have high growth and you have a monetization problem than a really good monetization model and no growth, because that kind of shows you what stage we're at. We're in the growth stage. So I thought this was kind of, you know, our approach here. I think the esports industry has been patched together, really grassroots from the beginning, and it's incredible. I mean, I've grown up with it. I think it's awesome. But that's kind of the state of where, let's say, even sponsor dollars look like. It's like NASCAR. Name me one story you'll remember from any of these ads that are running on this car. it's really not going to activate these sponsors meaningfully. And this is kind of this old world business model that was applied in esports. But I think the future is going to look a lot more like this. It's going to be a few premium sponsors that you deliver real content, not just kind of slapping ads or sponsors on a jersey. It's really about how are those real sponsors going to be able to kind of create stories that actually make sense. And I thought a good example would be, of course, our team, Seoul Dynasty. But the Overwatch League, I think, has done a tremendous job of really elevating the level of sponsorships to the point where they actually have said no to a lot of sponsor offers, and we've said no to a lot of sponsorship offers because, to be frank, it's awesome getting some free stuff here and there, but you kind of lose sight, and pretty soon you say yes to one and you become like this. And then what major sponsor will want to kind of figure out a way to crowd you out from here? It'll be really tough. So it's better to work and get some home runs with a few, build those case studies, and that's kind of our approach. And one of the things that we thought about of why we thought Korea was the best place to build this kind of gold standard. So if you look at some people on our team, we have a pretty varied background. Lots of people from tech, from mobile gaming. I actually came from a beauty startup and Google, so kind of pretty random. But one thing that's really interesting was that we looked at esports, we looked at the global audience, and we could kind of pick where we wanted to kind of headquarters. And one thing that we realized from looking at the number one thing is it's actually about the players, right? You always have to win. I think if you look at the best teams in the world, Manchester United, Real Madrid, Los Angeles Lakers, you'll always see that they have a winning history. So you have to go where the best players are. And thus far, it's generally been in Korea. That's our team that's in League of Legends. And so that allows us to do something. We're not here in terms of number one across the board, unfortunately. But every year, we can legitimately say that we're going to try to field a number one team, right? And just the same way Manchester United is going to try to field a number one team. Just the same way the Lakers are going to go for LeBron James. It says really something about not being the Oakland Athletics, which are also a great team, but really going after the best talent to go number one, because you guys saw the revenue difference, right? And also, if you think about Korea, the infrastructure is unbelievable. This is a PC cafe. It's actually very similar to the one that looks like that UCI has, which is pretty cool. But it kind of shows you just the entire environment and country that is churning out some of the best players, the best talent, and the best amount of interest in esports. And then you have some of the fans, right? Like the fans are really, really incredible. So I think just the combination of passion, the combination of having the best players, and I think really the number one thing is really now the tough part, I think, for esports and for us is that we're really trying to deliver a premium branding on top of already what we think is a great infrastructure. So, we believe we have, are always going to be able to find the best talent, the players, the staff, the coaching. We have a global approach from day zero. So we love the fact that we have fans all over. I mean, actually, we started off with primarily Korean fans, as you would expect, and then we said, all right, let's go really unleash content in Korea and globally for our fans. And something interesting happened. It turns out that a lot of Korean esports teams are actually very cautious because they're part of a large conglomerate about content, versus we're much more, I guess, aggressive. And now, actually, it turns out, a Korean fan base has been growing pretty crazy, but about 80-90% of our fans are non-Korean. So I thought that was pretty amazing. That was very, very surprising for us and far past our expectations. And then number three, and this is something that we continue to work on, I think deliver premium branding doesn't mean it's expensive. It means that it's meaningful. So, figure out who those key sponsors are, figure out how you activate them, figure out how do you get those legitimate interesting moments to happen, whether it's offline tickets. And here's a great example. In Korea, for instance, ticket sales the average esports ticket is $5. You can never make money in a stadium charging $5 a ticket. I'm not saying the $5 ticket shouldn't exist. What I'm actually arguing for is that there should be a free ticket, right? And then there could also be a subset of tickets that are paid. right? So I really think there could be a lot of interesting opportunities, but generally I kind of wanted to kind of leave it up for discussion and kind of get some questions on the board, because I know people have, lots of different interests or lots of different questions. So I'm happy to kind of make it just kind of a general esports 101 thing. And just so you guys know, if you guys don't have any background on us, basically we own the Seoul Dynasty team, the League of Legends championship team from last year, the Heroes of the Storm team, PUBG team, and then we're going to announce another team in a couple days.
So you mentioned Manchester United, for example.
Yeah.
You're trying to or something you're trying to model in your organization after. But they only have to focus on being good at soccer, whereas KSV is trying to be good at like soccer, basketball, football, and baseball. What unique challenges does that present for your organization compared with maybe traditional sports, and how are you overcoming this?
Yeah, so we actually have one player that's from an Overwatch team, again, Eska, and he's playing on a PUBG team. I think their team is ranked number 2 right now. The season's like going up and down. But it's actually pretty surprising how few players are cross games. And that's, I think, going to continue to happen as these game scenes kind of mature. It is really challenging, but we're actually going to try to do a few things that are interesting. I think generally when it comes to the infrastructure, we can make those investments. So some investments that we've made are we're going to actually be building a training facility or basically a headquarters for esports within Seoul. So we'll have more details about that released as soon as we figure out what design we want and what. But by Q3 we'll have that launched. So that's going to be for the first time where let's say the best Overwatch player is going to be sitting next to the best League of Legends player. But even better is the best League of Legends coach is going to be sitting next to the best, Heroes of the Storm coach. So I think that's kind of how we're tackling it. We're kind of tackling it more like a university almost. So UC Irvine or UCLA, they are really good at a lot of sports. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking, is build really great infrastructure. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that many, Bo Jacksons that are able to do 3 esports at the same time.
When it comes to the structure of competitive gaming, whether it's esports being played at a large scale, or these players actually just kind of playing on their own time, practicing and taking place in smaller tournaments, what is the role in having society and culture actually financially support these players as professionals outside of winning large esport conventions? And so is there a new kind of career showing up for a lot of these players where just playing the game in and of itself and that branding is the profession, and then there's different times that are a little bit less related that are the esports side of it?
So are you asking like what jobs are getting created in esports, or are you asking
how important is the development of that part of the practice, like the professional side of it in relation to esports, which I feel is like
it's huge. It's extremely important. Yeah. I think it's one area that is kind of the natural growing pains as this becomes a real industry. There's 2 parts. One, I think one thing that is missing and one thing that helps to have within Korea is that a lot of these esports athletes, it's kind of their first job, right? When they become professional or when a league starts, versus in League of Legends where it's just kind of it's been there, who to look up to. But if you look at the NBA, you usually have like some dude at the end of the bench that's been there since 1995, Charles Oakley or John. Okay, these are like really old names. I got to do more like recent people. But like Dwayne Wade, there's a Dwayne Wade on the team, but that doesn't happen in esports.
Right.
Like, who do you go to that can be your mentor in esports? That doesn't really exist, especially if you're kind of in a new scene, especially in the US. But in Korea, one huge advantage we have is, we have former StarCraft coaches, so former StarCraft players. They kind of help you, deal with some of the stresses of the in-game. But to be honest, there's also a lot of stress now because this thing is getting huge. And right. It's brand new stuff that nobody's been able to deal with. So from our side, we've even hired kind of a head of marketing from SM Entertainment who manages all these K-pop groups and stuff, just so he knows like the dangers of being too wealthy and too young and too fast. So that's kind of what we try to offer. We try to pick and choose from different industries, but it really helps having that core like StarCraft. I mean, even if you think about like psychological awareness, if you get a psychiatrist who doesn't understand sports or esports, it's going to be hard to find esports. If you don't understand sports, it's going to be really tough to like sit there and go through that session. So yeah, I think across the board, that infrastructure is critical. Having a veteran player base is going to be really critical. And then also just having industry folks that know esports, I think that's really critical. And we are looking to hire, so feel free to email me.
So one of the toughest things I can assume is the language barrier, especially when reaching out to international fans. Like, for example, I think about and I look at examples like FlyQuest compared to TSM, and I don't see a lot of content. I don't see a lot of connection between the fans and the FlyQuest fan base, or, players. Whereas with TSM, you have TSM Legends, and
Yep.
I'm a video editor and producer myself on YouTube as well. So I see how a really well edited series like TSM Legends, can help bring this connection between the fans and the players, and help brand them and grow the organization as a whole. So what are some of the hardest things? I assume language barrier is a huge thing when it comes to, like if I'm American and I only speak English, how can I learn more about Crown, for example?
Yeah.
Or, or Cuvée or something like, what are the hardest parts about marketing towards other markets outside of Korea?
Oh man, this one's so hard. So I get you're right on, right? Like you have to build a fan base, and connection with the players is why the NBA is so successful. And it's been a big challenge for us, but that's why we were surprised with our progress. Was one, how we've tackled it was, look, we're going to offer English lessons, but they're probably not going to go that much or learn that quickly. So let's do what we can, and let's rely on the fact that these guys are the best in the world. So we gave them, what we have set up is one, content is content, right? Like I'm a big anime fan. Like I'll watch it subbed, not dubbed. That's really big. We actually have now creating a content studio. So we're building a full-on content team globally, both here in LA and in Seoul. Basically produce a lot of great video content, and then you can sub it in Chinese, you can sub it in English, and that's step one. But I think you can actually be, we have a bit more of a tech background, so a few things that we've actually set up is we've actually started doing simultaneous translations for all our Twitch streams. So if you look at our Seoul Dynasty Twitch stream, like it's kind of like what they do in the UN, like when they speak, let's say Korean, you'll automatically hear the other person talk. And then if you type in English on chat, we actually have, somebody actually doing the translation live to the player so that they can hear. And then we're also experimenting with some stuff around machine learning. Well, we're not doing the actual machine learning part, but we are, working with, let's say, some natural language processing tools, some transcription stuff, so that, I think within, my guess is about 2 to 3 years, stuff like Google Translate will be able to do full-on translations automatically. So we want to be ready for that. So we've been experimenting to see what level it's at. It's nowhere near ready because it's conversational and not esports terms, and you can't develop on top of that stack because it's all kind of in-house right now within Google and within Facebook. But we believe there will be tools for these kind of barriers to be broken down. So we're going to get a lot of good content there. It's going to be subbed. We're going to do cool stuff around like simultaneous translations in Chinese and in English. In the future, we'll do more languages. So that's how we've tackled it. But the hard part is these guys don't really use Twitter because Twitter is kind of dead in Korea. But they use Instagram, so go Instagram.
When do you think we'll start seeing more traditionalized compensation packages for teams and players? So, for example, I always like to use the Tom Brady model, where Tom Brady gets a sponsorship deal from Under Armour, and there's also like a backdrop of options and that kind of stuff. When do you think we'll actually start seeing more things like that, where because obviously you get the impressions and the KPIs almost like more than some more traditional broadcast and television, but I feel like the eyes and everything is under monetized in regards to the players,
Yep.
the types of influence they have, and they're really shortchanging themselves for, $100 grand and $1 million is a lot to some of these people, but that's really, really small when you look at like some of the people like Tom Brady and stuff, and these guys have way more followers and impressions than any of these other guys do.
Yeah, I think the wrong approach here is a numbers game, right? The CPM model, so cost per 1,000, is the wrong approach when it comes to selling ads, right? You do CPM model when you have an ad network, when you've got billions and billions and billions of impressions, versus numbers are kind of meaningless here. I think that's why it's more important. So in terms of short answer, I think it's going to happen in the next 2-3 years. So super quick. But I think the deals will get struck now. So what I mean by that is, it's the same way Jordan changed the game for what a athletic sponsorship meant. Just the same way you can't just attach a logo to the thing. I think that same thing is going to happen where they're going to find that like magical marriage where all of a sudden a new brand launches and it's super successful because of that endorsement, not the already successful brand and they happen to have this person. So I think that's the part that's missing, is that full-on engagement that really shows a unique activation, unique to that keeps both the brand's identity as well as the player's identity. I think that's when you're going to start seeing those kind of deals, and then it's just going to be cookie cutter afterwards. So I think right now is more for the time where there should be more strategic budget being opened up by these brands to try new, cool, risky stuff. And then once somebody proves it, everybody's going to do the fast follow and be like, okay, copy paste that, but then put a bunch of back-ended stuff on the contract, based on how many all-star appearances or all that stuff that these other guys get. So I think that's where the industry sells itself short, is that these guys are hyper engaged, super cool, really fun, and very young, so they're able to connect directly with audiences. And then I see a lot of esports companies just try to sell Twitter followers, and it's a lot easier just to pick up an Instagram star for those same numbers, or even better.
Hi. I'm very much outside the esports arena, so I'm sorry if this sounds like silly questions, but you're talking about how a lot of the players are really, really young. Have you guys started thinking about like long-term plans of like how long are people lasting in the esports? Do you guys feel any responsibility for taking care of them after they leave whatever competition or team that they're on? And what are the ramifications for people after esports?
Yeah.
Not always negative, but in that light.
So a couple of things. I think I have a few minutes. So two things. One, I think people exaggerate how short an esports career is. The reason why, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, the reason why there have been such short esports careers is because you start off with a player base, an esports game gets huge, and then it gets so much more competitive, right? So it's almost like a pyramid of competition, right? Like the first ones here are like the olden days of the NBA when you're playing with like the hoop that's like the basket. But almost on a rapid scale, the competition scale and the pool of talent that's competing, who are generally younger, also just end up supplanting you a lot faster. So I think there are some limitations around physical, but I think the mental far outweigh. So I think, esports careers will continue to grow longer, just the same way LeBron James just dropped 45 points. But I've been watching the NBA a lot since I've been able to be in the States for the last week. So that's going to happen. But when it comes to the careers, so we're really aware of that, and we're trying to push and offer as many opportunities for especially the older players to explore coaching, to explore streaming, to explore being a business person, right? And that's where we have a lot of advantages being in Korea. We have guys that were former players as our business staff, right? Like one of our head GMs is a former StarCraft coach, a StarCraft player actually. So that's where we really encourage the players to take on kind of a longer view of their career. That's why we also encourage them, hey guys, like go start your Instagram account, start posting a lot more. We'll take that risk with you as long as you don't say anything that's like really, really wrong or anything like that. We are very, very aware of it, and we push for them to go build their careers, go build their own unique brands, because who knows how long they'll be with us, hopefully long, but if they go to their next team, their Instagram account is still going to be their Instagram account, right? Their branding is still going to be their branding. So that's a different approach, I think, in Korea, and that's one that has been a little bit more difficult to kind of push because doesn't really happen as much. So anyway, I'll be available for questions or chats or anything just outside. But my email is ahur@ksv.gg. If you guys know any great people that are looking for esports stuff, just email me and I'll join. Cool. Thanks, guys.